Marcus stands in a parking lot, keys to a 6-year-old Corolla in his hand, watching his old roommate climb out of a leased Mercedes with a smile that says, "I made it." Marcus made 3 times what that lease cost in his brokerage account last year alone. Nobody at that parking lot knows it, nobody's ever going to know it, and Marcus, somewhere around his 2nd year of deliberately choosing invisible over impressive, stopped caring whether they did. Let's start with the actual decision because choosing wealth over looking rich sounds like a slogan until you understand what it actually costs, in real dollars, every single month. The Mercedes lease runs $650 a month. The Corolla payment ended 2 years ago. Marcus's only monthly car cost now is insurance and gas, roughly $180. That's a $470 monthly gap. Invested at a reasonable 8% return over just 10 years, that gap alone becomes approximately $86,000. One decision, one parking lot, $86,000 of difference. And nobody watching either car pull away had any idea the math even existed. Here's the first thing that shifts once you actually commit to this path. Your relationship with other people's opinions gets quietly, permanently rewired. Marcus used to care, genuinely, uncomfortably, what his coworkers thought about his car, his apartment, his clothes. That caring cost him real money for years, because caring about perception is expensive. It's arguably one of the most expensive emotions a person can have, since it demands constant reinvestment just to maintain the image. The moment Marcus stopped needing the parking lot to be impressed, an entire category of spending simply evaporated, not through willpower or deprivation, but because the want itself disappeared once the audience stopped mattering. Let's talk about the psychology underneath this, because it's more specific than some people care about status and some don't. Thorstein Veblen coined the term conspicuous consumption over a century ago to describe spending whose entire purpose is being seen, not enjoyed. And here's the detail most people miss. Conspicuous consumption only works as a signal when it's genuinely costly to the person doing it. That's the whole mechanism. The Mercedes lease proves something specifically because $650 a month is a real sacrifice for the person paying it, which means the entire signal is built on cost, not value, and Marcus's old roommate is, quite literally, purchasing discomfort in exchange for a stranger's fleeting impression in a grocery store parking lot. Here's the second shift. Once status spending disappears from the budget, the category of decisions people make changes entirely, not just the dollar amounts. Marcus used to ask, "Can I afford this?" Now he asks, "What does this cost me in 20 years? A $65 dinner isn't $65 anymore. It's $65 that could have compounded into roughly $470 over 2 decades at a reasonable market return." This isn't about never eating out. Marcus still does, regularly, guilt-free. It's about the category of spending that gets filtered through this lens versus the category that doesn't. Status purchases get the 20-year question. Genuine enjoyment purchases mostly don't, because the whole point of building wealth quietly is eventually spending confidently on what actually matters, not building a joyless spreadsheet out of every sandwich. Let's talk about the third shift, because this is where the actual numbers get genuinely staggering. Research on this exact comparison, comparing net worth to visible spending, consistently finds that the correlation between how wealthy someone looks and how wealthy someone actually is far weaker than most people assume, and in some notable studies, actually runs in the opposite direction. High-income earners who spend heavily on visible status symbols frequently show lower net worth than moderate earners who don't, because income and net worth are entirely different measurements. One tracks what flows in, the other tracks what actually stays. Marcus's roommate makes more money than Marcus does. Marcus is worth roughly 4 times more than his roommate. Same zip code, same parking lot, completely different balance sheets, and absolutely nothing about either car reveals which is which. Here's the fourth shift, and it's the one that surprised Marcus most. The less he spent on visible status, the less he wanted to. This sounds backwards, almost like it shouldn't work this way, but there's a real mechanism behind it. Every time Marcus chose the boring option and watched the difference compound instead, the choice itself became reinforcing. Seeing $470 a month turn into real, tangible portfolio growth created a feedback loop that a leased Mercedes could never provide, because the Mercedes's reward fades the moment the new car smell does, while the compounding reward keeps building, quietly, in the background, every single month, whether Marcus thinks about it or not. Let's talk about the fifth shift, because it deals directly with something almost nobody discusses honestly. Choosing invisible wealth over visible status doesn't just save money, it changes who asks you for money. Marcus's cousin, still unemployed after a rough year, never once asked Marcus for help. The Corolla in the driveway simply never invited the question. But a mutual friend who leases a nicer car and posts vacation photos gets hit with requests constantly. Family members assuming, reasonably enough, that visible spending implies a comfortable surplus available for borrowing. This isn't some deliberate strategy Marcus engineered. It's a side effect nobody warns you about, and it turns out to be one of the more valuable, least discussed benefits of staying financially invisible. Now, I want to be genuinely fair to the other side here, because looking rich is always foolish is too simple a claim, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. There are real, legitimate contexts where visible success matters professionally: a real estate agent selling luxury properties, a consultant pitching high-end clients, someone in an industry where perceived success genuinely correlates with earned trust and closed deals. For someone in that specific position, an unremarkable car in the client parking lot can quietly cost them business they'd have otherwise won. The choice Marcus made isn't a universal law. It's a tool that fits some careers and actively works against others, and pretending every single person should drive a 12-year-old Corolla regardless of context would be bad advice dressed up as wisdom. Here's the sixth shift though, and it's the one that actually matters for most people reading this, since most careers don't depend on visible signaling the way luxury sales does. The overwhelming majority of jobs don't actually reward the appearance of wealth at all. They reward competence, reliability, and results, none of which require a leased Mercedes to demonstrate. Marcus works in software. Nobody in a code review has ever once asked what he drives. The entire premise of status spending as a necessary investment collapses the moment you honestly examine whether your specific career actually requires it, and for most people, the honest answer is simply no. The spending was never functional, it was emotional, dressed up as professional necessity. Let's talk about the seventh shift, because it's about time horizon, and it's genuinely the crux of the entire comparison. Visible wealth provides its reward immediately. The compliment in the parking lot happens today. Invisible wealth provides its reward on a delay, sometimes a very long one, which is precisely why so few people choose it. Humans are wired to prefer immediate, certain rewards over larger, delayed ones, a pattern behavioral economists call hyperbolic discounting. Marcus's $86,000 gap doesn't exist yet in year one. It exists only as a projection, invisible and unfelt, while his roommate's compliment is real, immediate, and dopamine-triggering today. Choosing wealth over appearance means consistently choosing the delayed, larger reward over the immediate, smaller one, and that's a genuinely difficult psychological pattern to sustain, which is exactly why it's rare enough to be worth making a video about in the first place. Here's the eighth shift, and it deals with something almost nobody mentions. The compounding effect isn't just financial, it's also social, in a quieter, less obvious way. Marcus's friend group has slowly shifted over the past several years, not through any dramatic falling out, but through simple gravity. He spends more time now with people who talk about index funds and real estate deals than people who talk about which car to lease next. This wasn't intentional exclusion. It's what naturally happens when your actual priorities diverge from a previous social circle's priorities. Some old friendships survived the shift easily, others quietly faded, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because shared values around money turn out to be a surprisingly strong predictor of which friendships actually last long-term. Let's talk about the ninth shift, because it's the one that finally explains why Marcus doesn't feel deprived. Despite driving a 6-year-old car and wearing the same jacket for 3 winters running, the money didn't disappear, it just moved. Every dollar not spent on the Mercedes lease is still Marcus's dollar, sitting in an account, growing, available to him whenever he genuinely needs or wants it. This is the detail that, looking rich, spending obscures most effectively. Leasing isn't actually cheaper than the alternative, it just feels cheaper in the moment, because the money leaves in small, manageable monthly increments instead of arriving all at once as a lump sum sitting visibly in an account. Marcus isn't poorer for skipping the Mercedes. He's dramatically richer, and the money simply lives somewhere he can actually see the total, instead of somewhere a dealership can see it disappear. Here's the 10th and final shift, and it's the one that took Marcus the longest to fully believe. Eventually, the wealth stops needing to stay invisible out of necessity, and starts staying invisible out of preference. There's a version of this story where Marcus, 10 years from now, could easily afford the Mercedes, the nicer apartment, the flashier version of every choice he's made, and simply doesn't want any of it anymore, because the habits that built the wealth in the first place became who he actually is, not just the temporary phase he was passing through on the way to eventually arriving somewhere flashier. The quiet Honda driving millionaire isn't secretly wishing he could afford the Mercedes. He tried caring about that for years, and found something better on the other side of not caring anymore. So here's what actually changes in a life once someone genuinely chooses building wealth over looking rich, not performing the choice for an audience, but actually rewiring the instinct underneath it. The car gets older and stops mattering. The compliments get quieter and stop being missed. The spreadsheet gets checked less anxiously, because the plan is already working, whether anyone's watching it or not. And somewhere around year 3, year 5, year 10, the exact timeline is different for everyone. The person who made this choice stops experiencing it as a sacrifice at all, and starts experiencing it as simply how they live now, the way Marcus does, standing in a parking lot next to a Corolla that's never once impressed anyone, quietly worth more than most of the cars parked around it, and entirely, permanently fine with nobody ever knowing that at all.